Hey everyone, I was doing a Q&A over on Instagram a few weeks ago, and I got a question that I was happy to answer there, but I realized that some of you here might be interested in the answer to this question as well. So the question was, when will we be able to travel again? And I will focus just on the astrology here because I know there's so many factors that go into travel and travel restrictions and travel safety given the pandemic that we all find ourselves in 2021. So what I wanted to do was just speak to a couple of the astrological factors that I think will play into the situation with travel. Now, I did talk a little bit about this in my video on Jupiter in Capricorn and how that was connecting to the events of 2020. Because, of course, travel, especially long distance travel that takes you further afield, is definitely a Jupiter type thing. And so one of the points that I've been making has been that while we have Jupiter in a sign ruled by Saturn and also in the same sign as Saturn, so while Jupiter's getting like a double Saturn influence, we are going to see some restrictions. So that includes all of 2020 and most of 2021, because in 2020, of course, Jupiter was in Capricorn and so was Saturn. And in 2021, Jupiter's in Aquarius and so is Saturn. There's a short period this year in the middle of 2021 where Jupiter will pop into Pisces. So I'm going to talk about that. But there's sort of two big things that we need to see change astrologically. We need one thing that's going on to end, and we need one thing that's kind of not happening that will be helping to start. And we need those two things to happen before I think we see a big move back towards traveling. And I know that there is a level of travel that is still happening now for essential workers primarily, but I know that in different parts of the world, things look a little different. So I do appreciate that this won't be 100% specific to all countries in all regions of the world. But the general feeling, of course, right now is that all airlines are operating at a greatly reduced capacity, running at a big loss. Many of them are just doing cargo flights to try and, keep things ticking over. So generally speaking, Jupiter being in a sign ruled by Saturn, which is Capricorn or Aquarius, and then having Saturn in the same sign while Jupiter is there. There's sort of two layers of restriction there for Jupiter. So that's not helpful. In 2020, Jupiter had the added quality of being in its fall condition while being in Capricorn. So at least we don't have that this year. However, we do still have Jupiter in a Saturn-ruled sign and co-present with Saturn for most of the year. But towards the very end of the year, I'm going to double check exactly, Jupiter is going to move into Pisces. That's going to happen around the 30th of December, 2021, where Jupiter moves into Pisces permanently and doesn't come back. So that's one of the positive changes that I'm looking forward to that I think will be helpful for the travel industry in general. I don't have necessarily a clear list of key points as what that means. Will you have to have a vaccine to travel? Will you have to test to travel? All those types of things are a little bit outside my scope as an astrologer. So while I can't necessarily comment on those specifics, I can certainly say it's in this time period where the planet supporting travel improves greatly, and we could see a big shift towards an increase, particularly in long haul or long distance or international style travel. So very end of December, now 30th of December 2021, it's essentially 2022 that's going to be in play. The other change that I would like to see astrologically that will help travel is to see the South Node move out of the sign of Sagittarius. The South Node moved into Sagittarius in May, I think, of 2020. I'm just double checking my trusty ephemeris here as I'm talking with you all. Early May 2020. Now, of course, we had already had massive cuts to a lot of international travel by the time we got to May 2020, but that has just deepened and increased since then. So the North Node in Gemini, it's the South Node in Sagittarius, a sign that is so often associated with movement and travel that I think is impairing global travel as a whole. The previous time that we had the North Node in Gemini and the South Node in Sagittarius is all the way back in 2001 and 2002. And that was during the time of 9/11 in the US. And that had a massive impact on travel. The South Node moved into Sag in October of 2001, North Node into Gemini, and then was there. The nodes spend about 18 months moving through the zodiac signs. And the one catch with the nodes that often trips up students is that the nodes move backwards through the zodiac sign. So the last time we had the South Node in Sag, we did have a lot of disruption to international travel. There were, understandably so, a number of extra security requirements and restrictions about what we could and couldn't bring onto planes as a result of 9/11. And so keeping in mind that the events are different, but the impact on the travel industry in terms of having to massively change their practices and their ways of operating, there's a level of similarity there. So just drawing a little bit of a parallel from the last time we had the South Node in Sag and the disruptions to travel, and also knowing that we have the South Node in Sag now and there are major disruptions to travel. Countries have got borders closed that don't normally. I mean, I'm in the EU, in the Schengen region right now, and different countries, normally the Schengen region, it's a grouping of countries in Europe that typically have open borders. So both goods and people can move across freely without documentation, and there's the taxes all, there isn't customs and import duties tax if I get something from France sent, to Belgium, for instance. But at the moment, that free-flowing movement isn't the case. And, I think it's the longest land border in the world between Canada and the US, that's been closed for almost a year now. So these are in addition to air travel, which many of you know I have a special fascination with and connection to living, having family in one country and a life in another country. So air travel is a big part of it, but even country by land, by train, by car is different at the moment as well. So the two things in summary that we need to see change before we could expect a return to more regular style travel, or certainly an increase in travel, is we want the South Node to leave the sign of Sagittarius, and we'd like to have Jupiter settled permanently into the sign of Pisces. So Jupiter moves into Pisces December 30th, 2021. The South Node will leave Sagittarius in the second half of January 2022. So between late December 2021 and late January 2022, we're going to have two changes that will each have a positive impact on travel. The South Node in Sag can describe some of the difficult factors that are limiting or restricting or depleting travel and the travel industry. Jupiter in Pisces is going to provide pathways that support or show the growth or increase of travel. So we remove some of the barriers and we bring in things that facilitate travel happening. And I think we're likely to see by the end of January 2022 an increase. It's either already happened or has started with particularly international and long-haul travel. So that's the long-range forecast for that. Of course, watch this space and we'll see how things unfold over the year to see how closely this particular astrology links to the events. There is one period before the end of 2021 that I think will see a return to, or a level of increase, particularly in local or regional travel. And that's the period from mid-May to the end of July 2021, when Jupiter will make a short and temporary visit to the sign of Pisces. The South Node will still be in Sagittarius, so we know we've still got some of those depleting factors to do with travel and the airline industry in play. But Jupiter coming into Pisces shows there is some sort of progress or relief or support where we're getting some forms of travel or some types of travel perhaps back online. Whether they're just back online for that mid-year period, which will be the summer in the Northern Hemisphere, or whether we're starting with local and regional, and then we can add on more international as the year unfolds. I know some of the airlines are starting to talk about, airlines here in Europe and airlines in Australia are starting to talk about adding in international routes, even in that May to July period, which is very, I'm happy about that as someone who travels a lot, but I know we all still have to make choices that will keep ourselves and our families safe. So it'll be interesting to see whether the mid-year period corresponds with sort of a tentative or an initial foray back into some of the long haul. You know, when I say long haul, I'm talking flights that are like 8 to 17 hours. These are the flights that take you from one continent to another or from one country to another. They're not the flights that might take you, you know, a couple of hours from one state to another, I guess. So it is, I guess, for those of you who, like me, are interested to see when travel returns, it's perhaps somewhat reassuring to see some plans in the first temporary Jupiter and Pisces period, that mid-May to late July, starting to come forward. And that in and of itself is reassuring perhaps, or just providing a little bit of confirmation that we could probably expect more in 2022 once Jupiter gets into Pisces more permanently and the South Node leaves Sagittarius. So let me know your thoughts if you have any questions or comments on this video. I did answer this sort of quickly in an Instagram story recently, but I thought the material was interesting and I've had the question come up quite a lot. So I wanted to record a video that we can refer back to here on YouTube more permanently if we need to. Always love to hear your comments and questions. So feel free to leave any notes for me in the comments section below. Let me know if you're interested and excited should travel return, or if you're more cautious and you're going to stay put regardless. Love to hear your thoughts on everything, and I'll be back with more soon. Take care.